Alright guys, today we're going to embark on a big mission to give you the top 10 runs or story arcs for X-Men. Now this is a huge list and obviously we won't cover every major arc or storyline, but these are 10 that we really enjoyed. And today I have a special guest, Omnibus Ryan, another YouTuber who I'll post his link below so you can check him out. He goes into great introspects on the X-Men books while also giving great overviews of omnibuses and even statues. So I recommend checking his channel out 100% if you're a comic book fan. But without further ado, we're going to jump right into the top 10 X-Men comics, runs, or series. And of course, we're including the spin-off titles, so not just like X-Men has to be in there, but pretty much any X-Men or mutant stories in the Marvel world. And we're going to get right into it right now.
Alright guys, the first story I'd like to draw some more eyes to is the original Excalibur run by Chris Claremont and Alan Davis. And before we even get into the context of the story, I want to preface by saying I always talk about how exciting it is that comics are this interdisciplinary effort of art, writing, layout, lettering, and all of that. And this book uses all of those things expertly to enhance its storytelling. But okay, so what is Excalibur? This book takes place after Fall of the Mutants, when a lot of X-Men are presumed dead and a lot are very, very injured, and a few make their way over to Europe and team up with some folks there to carry on the dream of Charles Xavier. Excalibur, this team that they formed, consists of Captain Britain, who is this struggling leader character who has bouts with alcoholism as well, two wonderful X-Men we all know and love, Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler, then Rachel Summers, the Phoenix, who, this is, I will say, the best she's ever written, and nothing really has come close since, in my opinion, and then Megan, who you might not know because this is also the best she's been written, and it's the best she's been utilized because frankly she isn't utilized that often, but she's an empathic shapeshifter, and you can imagine how useful that power is when it comes to visual storytelling. The book itself is this slightly absurdist X title that is full of multiversal fun, deep and engaging character relationships, some really nice romance in there by the way, for those of you who enjoy that like I do, and some of the most zany ideas meshed with some of the most powerful character moments. I think a lot of people maybe overlook this gem because on a surface level, this seems like some random British book with mutants in it, but I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss it because it really captures something beautiful and gives its cast of characters a real soul that has had a lasting impact on me, so I hope you check it out and I hope you enjoy it too.
Alright, so my first choice is going to be Hellions. Hellions came at a great surprise because most of the people on this team are either A, pieces of shit, B, not very popular, or C, you never heard of them. But thanks to Wells, the writer, we have a fantastic mix of idiots, killers, and psychos to really make this one of the most entertaining X-Men books I've actually ever read. They are probably the worst team ever, and they kill each other a lot more than they kill the enemies. And it's led by Mr. Sinister, who is a sassy little firecracker, and Psylocke, who's a badass ninja warrior, so that makes a really fun combo. There's a lot of funny moments to be had in this series, and there's actually a couple of surprise twists that actually took me for a surprise. So this is actually one of my favorite modern X-Men titles, and it's just wrapping up in the next couple of weeks, so check this one out.
It seems like some of my favorite X titles come from storylines where the X-Men are presumed dead, and this is again the case for my next recommendation, the New Mutants run by Chris Claremont. This brand new mutant team assembles when Charles Xavier reopens his mutant school for a brand new class. This team consists of Karma, who basically controls people, Wolfsbane, who can turn into a werewolf or werewolf hybrid, Sunspot, who is powered by the energy of the sun and that gives him like super strength and flight, Cannonball, who is kind of an indestructible human rocket, and then Mirage, who can create illusions based on fears or desires. Later on, we also get Magic and Warlock and a couple of others who join the team, and there's really so much to discuss here, guys. I could talk about this for hours, and I will probably eventually because I've already started making a few video essays about this run. One of the main reasons I love it so much is that the characters all come from so many different backgrounds, and that has informed their point of view on life, but as they grow together, they all go through these really unique and satisfying ideological evolutions, and I'm honestly just so impressed that they were were able to do this in so many different ways in one book. I think the whole run is great, but I'd like to specifically recommend when Bill Sienkiewicz takes over the artwork. His artwork is phenomenal and has a sort of sinister undertone to it that Claremont's stories start to match, and just because this book features teens, don't think it's very pedestrian in the way it handles. I think we all know there are big struggles that come with growing up and finding your place in the world, and Claremont's ideas match that well, and this is when we get these really interesting sort of mental character explorations with storylines like Demon Bear, The Slumber Party, and Legion's first appearance. Give this one a read, at least some of those notable storylines. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Alright, my next one is Messiah Complex. This was a big event that brought in all the current X-Men titles at the time, and man, did it knock it out of the park. The mutants are in serious trouble after House of M, and nobody is producing the X gene anymore, and they might go extinct. Until there is a new mutant baby. Now with every single organization and mutant group all trying to get to this baby at the same time, it's basically a race against time. There will be carnage, death, and betrayal at every corner, and this has to be one of my favorite events because it's written by some of the best in the business, like Brubaker, Craig Kyle, Christopher Yost, and the penciling works from like Ramos and Townsend. This has got to be one of the best events, but also one of my favorite X-Men stories forever, and it'll always kind of be my first major mutant-related event that really got me into the X-Men.
Now we move on to the story Chris Claremont left the X-Men title with, and that is Adjectiveless X-Men by Claremont and Jim Lee. Worth noting, the first issue of this run is the best-selling single issue of all time. Now this is the Return of Magneto, and it is his return as a more villainous character, as in some of the previous Claremont stories he'd slightly turned a new leaf, but this brings him back as a bad guy, but in a very complex and nuanced way. This is also the introduction of a new status quo for the X-Men, since there are so many of them at this point, and you know, there's the famous, what are we gonna do with 13 X-Men? Well, this lays out the groundwork for that. The story revolves around the X-Men dealing with Magneto, who's kind of imposing a threat on the world, even though he's in space, in his asteroid M, which is a space station. There's some surprisingly really touching stuff in this story, and it acts as a nice bookend to this version of Magneto that Claremont has been delivering to us for years before this. Also, Jim Lee's artwork is such a joy to the eyes, and honestly, there's so much iconic visuals that come out of this story. As it is kind of a swan song, I think this book works better as a story if you already have some familiarity with the X-Men and Claremont's work on the X-Men, so I would recommend giving this one a read once you have a better framework for the X-Men and the thematic conversations that have been cultivating in the past.
My next one is XFactor Investigations. This is one of those series where I read the very first arc and I was so blown away that I had to keep reading. Luckily, after over 80 issues and over 20 plus volumes in graphic novels, this series mostly stays great. There's some iffy issues at kind of like the end of the series, but the first half especially is fantastic. For fans of things like Angel, where a group of heroes are trying their best to do investigations and in this world help other mutants, plus their own drama stories of relationships and more, this is everything you can ask for. With sharp writing from Peter David, this series really stuck with me, and I became an instant fan of more than half the cast. So give me more, please.
I of course have to add the Outback Era of X-Men to my list, because while this is a short-lived iteration of the X-Men team, it is an incredibly fun team that's got a really wonderful character dynamic. This era is a gift to us from Chris Claremont and Mark Silvestri. This run starts around Uncanny X-Men 229, and then goes to about issue 252. And if you haven't touched this run before, you're probably wondering why I'm calling it the Outback Era. Well, that's because the X-Men have a new base in Australia during this time. It's also a team that seems like it's missing a few key staple characters, but it works incredibly well despite their absences, and in fact, it's nice that we get some spotlight on some, at the time, lesser utilized X-Men. I particularly enjoyed Havoc, Dazzler, Psylocke before she walks through the Siege Perilous and ends up in Quinon's body, Colossus, and Madeline Pryor. We also get the introduction of Jubilee, our favorite mall rat during this time, and she has a really well done, interesting first encounter with the team, specifically Wolverine, that is just so awesome and feels feels like a movie to watch unravel. And without giving anything away, I'll just say Jubilee has to step up here and grow up very, very quickly. And again, this is a book where I don't know if I'd qualify anything as like their epic battle of this era, but really I enjoy it for the character relationships. They do a really fantastic job with fleshing out the characters in this run, and that is always deeply satisfying for getting me invested in my comic books. And don't get me wrong, we do get some immense, incredible action, some awesome displays of power and whatnot, but to me that is just a bonus, and it's that character framework that truly stands out.
And my second to last choice is X-Men by Grant Morrison. If you haven't been on my channel long, I'm not the biggest fan of Grant Morrison. It's not that I think he's a bad writer or anything, it's just that some of his stories don't really work for me. I don't understand them, or I just don't like the direction they go. Luckily, New X-Men is not one of those. Morrison smartly takes the X-Men for a ride in his very first issue and shakes up the foundation. Having them hit by an attack by humans, you really get to feel like the hurt and pain that not only the X-Men go through, but all the mutants have to go through on a daily basis. The rest of the run is just a great character work with characters like Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Paul, and more. And it's just so fast-paced, it's exciting, and honestly, at the time, it was revolutionary for X-Men and changed it forever. So I also think it's a really great point to jump on. It's a great starting point, so that's always a huge plus for me.
And finally, what I believe is one of the most revolutionary and probably divisive X-Men stories is House of X, Powers of X by Jonathan Hickman and Pepe Larraz. While you slept, the world changed. It's a famous, great line in this run that is delivered by Charles Xavier himself as he makes this announcement to the world that there is now a mutant nation, and that is Krakoa. This is an incredible story that brings us the latest evolution of the X-Men. I love it so much because it's kind of this amazing series that deals with creative problem solving for mutant issues, because as it's stated in the book fairly often, they have always lost. But not now. At least that's the goal, because now everyone is working together. This book also introduces a really fascinating retcon that I like a lot with Moira McTaggart, and that is that she's a mutant who, when she dies, the universe is reset, she's born again with previous knowledge, and she gets another try, basically. And so she's seen over and over these futures where mutants lose, and the nation of Krakoa and the subsequent planning is an effort to change that outcome from perpetual loss to mutants thriving. Another big focus that I think is a lot of fun in this era is mutant synergies, utilizing multiple mutant powers together to achieve a desired outcome. And this is actually how they figure out this way to revive dead mutants, which lends itself to some really exciting storytelling potential. And I definitely recommend giving this one a read. It's modern, it's well written, it's creative, it's got all your X-Men favorites in some exhilarating high-stake moments, and it showcases mutant culture in a really emotionally powerful way too, that I think we haven't quite gotten in the past.
So my number one choice is going to be X-Force by Rick Remender. Probably one of my favorite Rick Remender series in general. It's a group of basically killers working together on top secret missions led by Wolverine with the likes of Psylocke, Jean Paul, and Deadpool. What starts off though as a simple mission of kill or don't kill a certain somebody, it goes a lot deeper and darker. It makes you question your morality throughout the series. Then, to go even further, we go into the future, which of course is never nice. But before all the X-Men titles started to jump back and forth between different times, this was kind of revolutionary at the time when this came out. And we have a very dark and twisted future that we're trying to prevent. So this leaves plenty of new status quos, as well as an excellent ending to the run. And it actually makes you question just how far you would go to change the future that you know could happen. It's pretty great. It makes you question a lot of things. So these are our top 5 each X-Men arcs, giving you 10 stories, arcs, or runs to jump into right away. While Ryan's runs mostly deal with the 80s and 90s, mine will deal with mostly the 2000s and 2010s onward. And jumping into any of these, actually, it's just guaranteed for a good time. So pick up a couple of these and let us know what you think below. And for people who have read these, are any of these in your top 5 or top 10 X-Men stories of all time? Let us know below, and I hope you guys have a great day.